So fun.
1, 2, 3. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Entrepreneur Life Podcast, your go-to podcast for all things entrepreneurship, accounting, and lifestyle. I'm your host, Katey Maddux, founder, speaker, author, serial entrepreneur, and avid traveler. And today we have with us Lisa Zelenak. I'm so excited that you're here. Lisa is one of my very dear friends. In addition to being a speaker, author, entrepreneur, investor, co-founded her first startup at age 19. She was once afraid to even ask people for money, and now, with her passion for helping startups, has catapulted into the sales world, where she's taken over 5,000 sales calls, earned multiple seven figures, and has scaled multiple companies as a sales director. You're such a boss. In addition to being the author of best-selling books, Find Your Thing and Start Your Thing, Lisa has coached 30 plus business owners to grow their sales revenue. And in her latest venture, has led and scaled a virtual sales team from 360,000 to 750,000 in just months. That's like so crazy.
So good.
Now, combined with a brilliant team, her company, Limitless, helps thought leaders and coaches fall in love with the art of sales and leadership and scaling their companies from 7 to 8 figures. What a boss! Why are you such a boss?
Why are you such a boss?
Stop.
This is so fun already.
I'm so happy you're here. Tell us about yourself. Tell all the people all the things.
My favorite question, or least favorite question. What do you do? I was probably like a mini boss, right? Like when I was a kid, I was the kid that was always selling Girl Scout cookies out of my desk or starting little businesses. But my background actually started when I was in college. I co-founded a nonprofit. So I always had on my heart, like I want to do big things. I want to go global. I want to go in the middle of Tanzania and create whatever world impact. However, when I went to start this nonprofit, I realized you actually get to be good at sales and asking for money. And that was something I was horrified of. So not only was I starting a nonprofit, but really I was doing coaching. And I think back to like the first time when I asked for $1, like $1. I was so afraid of sales that I was like, do you want to pay like $1 for coaching? Like just so awkward, so squirmy.
Yeah.
And like owning what I was doing was such a disconnect. But the truth is, because I was my master's is in counseling. So because I just cared so much about people and like hearing what mattered to them, I always say I accidentally got really good at sales. And now I know that business is the vehicle to impact. So that's what I'm here to do. Help scale people who are creating massive impact, scale their sales, but really scale their impact. So no longer am I squirmy when asking for sales. My favorite quote is, sales isn't weird, you're weird.
I love that.
So great.
That is so great. And just, I know you as a friend way more than I know your background in business. So I'm really excited for this podcast because I feel like I'm going to learn so much about you that I've never even heard before, because that's just not typically our conversation is like, tell me about all the companies you scaled.
Yeah.
That maybe should have been our conversation. But Lisa's so humble that she just doesn't bring that stuff up in conversation if you don't ask her. So I love that. I'm really excited to hear. How did you go from being like, I'm afraid of sales, to being like the sales boss that you are? Like, at what age do you feel like you kind of had that transformational shift of like, okay, because you started your company at 19 and that was obviously a long time ago. Were you like 22 when that happened? Were you 30 when that happened? Like where, you know what I mean? Where did that shift happen? And how many years were you in business before the shift happened?
Yeah. Okay. So probably when I got good at sales was when I wasn't trying. Like when I actually dropped the sales and just focused on the impact. So really my whole startup, as I was doing the nonprofit, I was not good at sales. In fact, like I had no idea what I was doing, still afraid to ask people for money. The way I got into sales was I actually got into sales. So I went to this like high-end health club and I was so passionate about it. I love fitness. I love working out. We were just talking about that earlier. And I was just super passionate about it. And I went up to the director and I'm like, hey, can I work here? Like, can I get a job here? Like, I would love to just like promote this place. Super passionate about it. It wasn't like a gym. It was about like lifestyle and doing things that are healthy. So again, super passionate. He's like, yeah, well, actually, too bad. I had a job, but it's not open anymore. And I was just like, no. like, I'm going to work here. I really want to work here. So I just continued to be persistent. And finally he's like, okay, yeah, you can work here. Whatever. I'll make the opportunity. Which is actually funny, right? Because I think I was good at sales a lot without knowing. I didn't even like that word. Growing up, money, like I believed in my heart of hearts, like money is bad. Or if I want to be a good person, right? I said I wanted to go to Tanzania and do all this impact. Money, sales, that doesn't align with impact. So I never saw the parallel between
so many
the two.
people, I think, are up that way.
Yeah, and
thinking
it's
money's
such
bad.
a barrier.
Yeah.
Because again, even for impact, the opportunity comes with money. So again, accidentally fell into that. And really what I was doing is I would just sit with people, hear their health goals. Like some people were like 88 years old, struggling with health goals, or 55 and couldn't even walk or chase their grandkids. And I would just get so passionate about like hearing them, hearing what was really in their way, listening, which I think is the secret to a lot of sales, actually caring and listening. And yeah, I was quickly promoted to sales director because I was selling things left and right because I just was listening and offering them the opportunity to change their life. So the second I let go of the need to make money or raise money, that's probably the very moment in which I became good at sales.
Interesting. I feel like the two things that like I'm hearing as you're saying that is passion is one, and caring about other people. And if you have passion for what you do and you care about other people's success, then the sales just happen. The sales just convert. You don't need to like push selling. If you're pushing passion and I honestly want to help you and see you succeed.
Yes. And that's my biggest thing now. It's like taking a stand for people is what we're really doing. We're just coaching doctors like earlier this morning, and a lot
before
of doctors,
she got on this podcast, she was in my living room doing a call, and I was like, I get to see you in action. Sorry, interrupted. Continue.
It's so good. But a lot of doctors, they're people of impact, right? Like what they do is changing the world. And yet there's a parallel of I don't know how to do sales. I don't know how to ask for money. So sometimes it's just reframing, and it's like holding people high. That's a lot of how I like to describe it. I'm going to hold people high that this gets to be the reality. They get to take action into what becomes their best self. So yeah, sales, sure, is a byproduct. Like a sale is exchange, but really it's like holding people high to the goals and things that they said they wanted to do in the first place.
And when you say hold people high, like what does that mean? What does that look like?
Potential comes to mind. Like even as a kid, that's just always like potential. Like what's my potential? What's your potential? I always used to say that if you can, so I used to work in health and fitness, right? And I always used to say, if you can motivate someone to eat healthy and work out, then you're really good at sales. Because we all want that, right? Like I want to be fit, I want to eat healthy. And even on my best days, like my decisions don't always perfectly align with what I want for myself. So it's holding people high, empowering them to become the greater version of themselves. Just because their past patterns hasn't allowed them to take action, like holding them high in possibility. Okay, just because your life hasn't looked like this, what could it look like if you did take action now instead of delaying the very thing that you're saying that you want?
So good. I feel like that reminds me so much of, have you heard the expression like pulling out the gold in people? You're like pulling out the gold in people. Like we were all born with gold inside of us, but the gold has to be mined.
Yeah.
You know, like the gold is hidden in the rocks. And so it's not just like, oh, I'm just going to tell them this. I'm actually going to kind of like ask them questions to dig through the rocks of like their inner working. And through doing that, you find the gold. And then when you find it, you're like, oh, now we can bring this to the surface.
Yeah.
But we had to mine the gold first.
Oh,
and
so
like a lot of what I was hearing on your sales call even is like, you were literally like mining the gold out of people. You're asking them questions so that they can come to conclusions. And then you're like, that's it. Now you hit it. And then made them aware of the conclusions that they almost came to on their own. Do you agree?
Yeah. And I love that you said mining the gold, because a lot of our society is like self-help, growth, becoming this greater version of ourselves. But even the way you like held that, like going back to the authentic version of ourselves. Like when we were 5 years old, we were unstoppable. Yeah. And like the gold's already inside of us versus like, well, you need to change, I need to change, going back to the gold. So yeah, that's one of the things like when working with a client or someone on a sales call or coaching, like knowing that they have that in them. Not like they need to become this outside version, but it's like it's already in them.
You.
It's already in them.
Yeah.
I think it was Michelangelo, right? Michelangelo created David. The way that he said that he got to David was he got rid of everything that wasn't David. Yeah, like he already saw David. He was already inside and just getting out what was in the way versus like needing to create something that didn't exist.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I believe that like God placed gold inside every person, right? Like we were born with purpose. We were born with vision. We were born with identity. And so it's just pulling it out and finding it. Like not everybody has that awareness that like, no, there's gold inside of you. Some people, they honestly don't know that. You have to remind them. There's actually gold inside of you. You were born, like the way I like to think about it is like God had a purpose and then he created a human around that purpose. And so it was like, you were created to fulfill a purpose, meaning you were given special talents and special personality and everything that you needed to fulfill the purpose that was on your plate. And so like, it's already there. You have everything that you need. You just have to have maybe somebody help you mine it out.
So
you
good.
know?
So yeah, my first book, which was like ages ago, back when I was like doing coaching and counseling, was called Find Your Thing. And that's what I felt like the Lord gave me, this vision of like helping people find their thing, which doesn't have to be like this, like, again, far-fetched idea. A lot of it is inside of us. Even the things that make us frustrated, I think point to like our heart and what we really care about. So yeah, I love that. I think that's something you and I have in common is we get excited about like hyping people up and their talents. And, you know, like we just want people to be amazing because I think that's why we get along. We connected the second we met because we just both see that in each other and in people that we meet.
Absolutely. And now one of the things that I know about you that I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I think it's like such a cool story that I just would love to have you share it is about when you lived in the entrepreneur house.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
Who lives in an entrepreneur house? Like that is the coolest story, you know? I think they need to hear your story.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so I grew up in Detroit and
Michigan represent.
I love Detroit and I never like had the feeling like I needed to leave. Like I love Detroit. I will tell you about how amazing Detroit is. Go check it out. And yeah, I went out for a conference, which really cool story how I ended up there. I was supposed to go somewhere else, ended up there. And for 2 weeks, I thought I was just staying with a friend, and it ended up being this entrepreneur house where they like live together, they work together, they mastermind together. So every Monday night, we would mastermind together. And like one of my favorite things, so I got to play in this space when I was just visiting for 2 weeks. And it was like Monday night, we go around, every person shares for 7 minutes. You get 7 minutes, one problem. And that's it. You get 7 minutes and collectively we try to alleviate the bottleneck, like to the point, what's in the way. And I was shocked at what we could create in 7 minutes simply by asking a really good question.
What?
Yeah. And then meanwhile, there's a garage, like it's like Steve Jobs style, right? We're co-working in the garage. Like we got people on sales calls, people giving speeches. We're doing like Pomodoro methods, work for 50, take a 10-minute break. And I was just inspired by the potential. And something like I really believe is the next, like what I'm creating now is setting me up for the next 5 years of my life. So at the time, like things were going well and knowing that, wow, this could really help me elevate the next 5 years of my life if I make a decision to leave everything behind, move to LA. Of course, I know no one and, you know, this could be the greatest stretch opportunity. So I moved in and sure enough, just being with people, like minimally, I think you had to be making like 7 figures. I think 7 figures. And I'm like, I don't really fit the qualification, but based on like my mindset and how I was showing up, they're like, okay, you can be in this entrepreneur house. So yeah, that absolutely changed my life. That for a long period of my life, I was constantly surrounding myself, living with other entrepreneurs just to like, let it rub off on me. Like I would see how people would show up and get inspired. Yeah.
That is one of the coolest stories. Like who's actually done that? And how did you go from there to Tulum?
Well, actually a version of that. So when COVID happened and the world shut down, it was a cool opportunity to go somewhere that the world wasn't shutting down, but actually it was to create a mini entrepreneur house in Tulum. So a couple other friends, I'm a big Tony Robbins fan. I'm a big fan of a lot of things. I think Tony Robbins is the best in the world at some of the skills in which I'm developing with influence. And yeah, I'm like, hey, do you guys want to go together into Tulum? I think we were supposed to go to Bali, but Bali had shut down. And we went there and same thing. So we would like alternate. Someone would teach us this thing and then I would do like some sales or systems or scaling talks and we would just like alternate. We would mastermind. Same type of thing. Yeah, the goal was to be there for 2 months and then I ended up falling in love and buying a place and the rest is history.
And how long were you in Tulum until we met in Miami?
Because
you were still going back and forth when I met you.
Yeah. Maybe about a year and a half or so, like about a year. And then I have this like sense like a lot of times when things are going to grow, and I knew Miami was coming. So I was just originally planning on like investing and getting an investment place. And then, yeah, I realized like there's really quality people here.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
Incredible people in the city.
Yeah. Mixed with like probably the beach vibe. That's what I love about Tulum is there's like relaxation. And that's something I believe in is like having work-life balance. Like you won't really catch me working a lot of times after 4 p.m. because that's something that I like to create. So there's like the spaciousness, but yeah, in Tulum, I miss like that hustle. We're from Detroit, we like that little bit of hustle. So yeah, I fell in love with Miami, the quality of people here, and here we are.
And here we are. I love it. I just think that you're such an inspiration. Like there are so many people that like the things that you've done are so like breaking boxes. You know what I mean? They're so outside of what most people's scope of possibilities are. Like the fact that you could just go and live in a house of entrepreneurs. Going to live in a house of entrepreneurs. Who would even think of that? You know what I mean? And I think that it really opens people's minds when they get to hear of things that would have just never occurred to them.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a friend recently and he said, what's your dream for your life? And I said, well, I went to ministry school. I also run a business. I want to scale my business so that my business can fund my ministry. And I want to travel the world with my family speaking and also building companies across the world for women who are either coming out of human trafficking or have had some sort of sexual trauma and give them skills and train them up to be able to have businesses and support their families. But I also want to have my own company and I want to have a teacher that travels with us because I want my kids to be traveling with us and like giving back in the world, but also having really good education. And so he was like, it never even occurred to me to think of something like that. And I said, yeah, well, that's my dream. And he said, it's really cool being around people who just break your boxes of what could be. And that's what I think is so special about you is that just being around you, you break boxes for people. They're just concepts of what could be. The fact that you could just, without joining like, what was it? Remote year. You don't like have to join a company or join a program. I had a friend that did it and then he just dropped out. He was like, a lot of these people are just taking gap year. They're not actually trying to scale companies, And so I just love you. But I also think that just being around you is a gift to people because the things that you talk about are just so out of the ordinary that it just gives vision to people where they might not have been able to get there on their own. So you're such a gift.
Same to you, Katie. Like, of course. Like, and I'm actually curious if you have a similar story, but as you were speaking, I was thinking, yeah, because that's always been, like, patterns in my life show that here's the norm, I'm going to break outside of the norm. And I remember, like, in high school was probably the pivotal moment. Like, thankfully, I had a mentor, someone who, again, stood for me, held me at my highest. Because up until then, like, everything in my life was about what society expected, right? Like, get good grades, got to be the homecoming queen, got to, like, be really good at sports, have to do everything right. Probably from early childhood. Thanks, Dad. Shout out to you. I always was trying to be, like, the best at all these things. And sure, it was a gift, and it got me so far up until a point when then finally, like, a mentor of mine, I got invited to be in this thing called like this leadership class. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds really great, but that will ruin I need to take this many AP classes so I can get into this college. I'm trying to go to Stanford and all this stuff that like, for what I was holding just because society told me. And like, it was a really pivotal moment in my life because I remember like, am I throwing my life away? Literally just by being in this like 1 credit like leadership class. But what that meant I had to give up was truly the expectations of the world. And it was really cool to have a mentor who was like, here's what I see possible outside of how the world's always seen you.
Wow.
Yeah, because like there were points in high school, like I would be crying at night. Like I had everything. And yet like I would be in my bed, like crying at night, just thinking like, is this it? There's gotta be more.
Yeah.
So I'm super grateful for him. And actually still to this day, we talk about once a week pretty consistently. Like having a mentor, not only then at a crucial point in my life, but now someone who's seen me through like decades of my life to be able to speak wisdom over me and, just to be like a coach or a voice of, yeah, that sounds great. And that doesn't sound aligned with the person I know you to be. So super grateful to have someone who was like willing to have those courageous conversations with me at, age 14.
It's so crazy. And having a mentor is so important. And I I always laugh when I think of my mentor story because one of my now best friends is also one of my mentors. And I didn't know that that was the role that he was coming into my life for. I was just like, why is this guy trying to tell me what to do? Like, I have not given you permission to speak into my life. And at that time, I was not living my healthiest version of myself life. And so he'd be like, Katey, why are you doing this? Why are you going out with that person? Like, you're so much better than that. You do not need that. And I would be like, quit trying to control my life. Okay. Like, you know, and I didn't understand what he was doing. And then actually at the beginning, I didn't even like him because I just thought he was so bossy. And I had no idea the way that like everything was being lined up for him to step into this role of mentorship. And now he's like one of my most cherished friends. He's older than me, so he's my mentor, but also one of my best friends. And it's just so beautiful to see how, you know, God brings people into our lives. But one of the things that when I was first going to ministry school, I was like, man, maybe I should close my company. Like maybe that company was a vehicle for a time, but that wasn't the dream or that wasn't the vision or that wasn't the goal. And maybe this is God's way of saying like, close the business, you know? And I went and I traveled across the state and I had dinner with him and he said, no, Katey, that's not what you're supposed to do. He said, the business is supposed to fund the ministry. He's like, we're like moving into a new season in like capital C church world of ministries where instead of just like people that are in ministry being in ministry and just like living off of the church or living off of whatever, we're seeing that people are building businesses and the businesses are funding their ministries.
Yeah.
Like even people like Mike Todd, right?
Yeah.
He produces music, he writes books. Like look at all the big pastors, and they're not just pastoring, they're also creating wealth and legacy for their families, but they're doing it in a way that's healthy and that's with God, not outside of God. And I think that's the big thing, right? But that was so pivotal and life-changing for me. I can literally picture we were at Ocean Prime and we were Ocean Air. We were at the seafood one. I can't remember. No, Ocean Prime. And we were sitting there. Like I had one of those, the martinis that like the dry ice comes off and it was like bubbling. Did. Yeah. It was
Katey
like a
is so
candy.
fun. All of her like things that she does. She's very classy. I love all of your
It was like a pink and purple dry ice bubbling drink, you know? And like, I can literally picture us sitting there. Like it was such a pivotal moment in my life that I remember every detail of the night, what I was eating, what I was drinking, what we were wearing, like, you know, and it's just mentors can literally change your life by just opening your mind to something that was right in front of you, but you didn't see it because it was never in the scope of something that you would have thought of. And so I just think mentors are so important. Speaking of mentors, has your mentor since when you were 14, has it been the same mentor or have you had other mentors? And where did you find your mentors? Like if somebody's watching this and they're like, I would love a mentor, where do I get a mentor?
Yeah, well, I really resonate with what you were saying, right? Like your mentor was your mentor and then you also kind of mentor your mentor and now you guys are friends. Like
yeah.
It's like a friendship, but it's a mentorship. Yeah, he was my mentor and like there was a point in which he has told me many times I've shifted and been his mentor, whether it be in business or different things. I think the greatest thing, so like, first of all, appreciation like goes a long way. And I experienced that as mentoring other people that I learned to be like, whoa, it means a lot. Like I just got this handwritten letter from someone I had one conversation with the other day. It's like, wow, that was so meaningful that she took the time to send me a letter. Like, wow, how do I show up in a way where people know that like they mean so much? Like that's fueling. Like even the best of the best, even people who are selfless, right? It's still nice to be like, yeah, I'm having an impact. So one thing, even now he gets uncomfortable with praise, but I try to be like, thank you. Like I applied what you said and here's the impact it had because of you. So thank you. So that he knows like how he's showing up. So he's been like my consistent mentor. I've hired lots of different coaches, mindset, emotional intelligence, leadership, business, different things. And that's something, again, you and I believe in too, is like hiring people that are
hire the experts.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah. And if money is a bottleneck, great. Well, so is time and learning things the hard way. Like, again, I grew up with scarcity mentality. So I'm like, I got to figure everything out on my own. Cool. And at what price, But yeah, overall, like I just love the idea of showing people appreciation and then adding value back. So that's something I'm like, okay, cool. How can I add value back to my mentor? And either way, I think either way adds value, like in appreciation. Like people like to, we're put on this earth to serve and impact. So people like to know when they're making a difference. So that, and then anytime I can, show up powerfully in a certain way for him or other mentors, I think that's relationships. I think that's partnerships, how to like add value to people's life. That's a concept a lot of people talk about in the business world that I really resonate with. Like with my gifts, with my skill set, what can I do to add value to my mentor or other people? Which I think you do as well.
And your mentor, did he find you or did you find him?
Yeah,
most of mine have found me.
Of course. Your mentors found you. Well, actually, I know people that are very good at finding mentors. I think that comes with like getting into uncomfortable situations. Like there's a lot of times like thinking in my life when I didn't want to go to events or I didn't want to like talk to people because it's like, well, who am I? Who am I? Even still, I'm like, well, who am I to talk to these people? And when I show up in the world in that way, then who am I? Then I'm showing up not in a way that can add value. So yeah, I think mentors or friends, like seeking to add value first. And a lot of times people will be like, there's just something about you, like your energy, whatever that means. People are always like, just like I am excited and championing what people do. So I think that's probably like I'll get excited about the business people are building because I'm actually excited. And I think that's what draws people back to like, wow, like thanks for supporting my thing. How can I support you?
So look for people who champion you.
Yeah.
When you're looking for a mentor, if I'm hearing you correctly, like when you're talking to somebody and they're pouring value into you and they're championing, they're like, we want you to succeed and have already accomplished what you're trying to do. I think it's like 2-factor, right? You don't want a mentor of somebody who's never done what you're trying to do. There's so many people on TikTok selling how to have $1 million business. I'm like, you don't even have $1 million business. Like your mentor needs to have already had some experience in what you're doing. But also when you see somebody championing you, ask them, would you be willing to mentor me?
Yeah.
Ask the question. Ask for the sale.
For sure. Yeah, sales. Here we go. Now we're talking. Yeah. And actually, I wasn't even referring to that. I love that. And I was saying, I was more meaning like when people speak, you speak a lot. And I used to do a lot more speaking too. So maybe you don't resonate with this, but I know sometimes I speak and I'm like, oh shoot, did that resonate with anyone? And like I go into this like internal. So instead of being like the normal participant to come up to the speaker and being like, oh, I have a question. Like, hey, that was really impactful. Like building them up, even though they're like higher, right?
Yes.
They're higher. They're the mentor. Like, cool, but how can I build them up in a way that champions them? Even though they're the ones that I'm hoping will champion me. Yeah, I think like that's a pattern interrupt, right? Like they're used to just like giving. So showing up in a way where like even just a small compliment can mean so much.
Yes. I love that. And
you don't get speaking hangovers though, right?
Stop.
You just love it. She could go. Every time I'm talking to her, she's on to the next, speaking here, speaking there.
I love speaking, but I think it's because I love people. All speaking is being able to communicate with large numbers of people at a given time, and it's being able to add value instead of just adding value to one person. You get to add value to 1,000 people. That's what I love about speaking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's impacting people's lives, just like how you want to have an NGO. That's how I feel about speaking.
Yeah. And the energy in which like you show up, like, again, like you're like a natural speaker. You can move people with the way you communicate. So I love that. I love watching you. I love watching you in action.
Pivoting a little bit, I know that you are a queen when it comes to like systems. This girl has an amazing lifestyle business. Like you said, you don't work after 4 as my assistant and I laugh in the background. Mind you, we're scaling right now, right? So like there's hustle before there's rest.
Yes.
And I just had 2 years of rest. So now I'm in hustle mode. But just, can you give some insight as to what are your systems and how did you develop them? And when did you cross the line of like, okay, I'm just like throwing this together to get it done, to now I need systems and this is how I develop them?
Yeah.
Long question.
Well, I think this is one of, I get excited about sales, and most of what I talk about during the day is like scaling and like on a big level with big companies, but in its most basic form, I just love efficiency. and effectiveness. Like my MBTI is ENTJ. I don't know if anyone's an ENTJ. Basically, we love things effective, like getting things done. So I think systems mentality came when I just wanted okay, this is kind of funny, but kind of not. Like my friends used to joke that like one friend would call me, another friend would call, and I would just put them all in the same call, and I'd be like, let's all talk. They're like, is Lisa outsourcing her friendships right now? Because I'm like all about efficiency. Like I used to be kind of impersonal as well. So there's like something powerful when we can create mass impact. Like you were saying, instead of one-to-one, you're doing one-to-many. You're impacting thousands of people at the same time. So I have this internal drive for efficiency and effectiveness. And that's what I think started to make me think like, how can I do this in a repeatable way? And not just repeatable, but simple. So playbook, playbook is one of my favorite words. I have what's called a personal playbook. And if you don't, I highly recommend it. It's, again, basically like a series of references, templates, systems. Maybe we can get into it, maybe not. But it's things that I do more than once that I can put in a system and repeat. And then that way, like for my assistant, instead of like explaining every time one-off tasks, it's a system. Or if someone asks me, so like, okay, questions that people ask all the time. For example, hey, what's the Wi-Fi password? Or like, hey, how do I get into your house in Tulum if I want to stay there? Or whatever, subscriptions, like things that I do over and over. Watering the plants. I was thinking of watering the plant over there. I have a playbook or a system for how to do these things so that I don't waste time like refiguring them out. Or if I'm out of town, instead of having to explain to someone, here, can you water my plants? It's like, here, send the doc. Here's how you water the plants. Here's how you get into my house. Here's how, like whatever. Here's my passwords. Here's whatever I need. So a lot of things in my life, while it might seem impersonal, what it's allowed me to do is be so
efficient.
Yeah.
I love this.
Because like, again, how many times have people asked me for recommendations of where to go in Tulum? Too many that my default would probably be, forget it. I do not have time to help you. But instead it's like, oh, of course, here's my playbook on all of the places I would absolutely go for if you're going to Tulum. Or where to park for the Miami Dolphins game. I literally have a playbook on the free place you can park. So again, any question that I get asked once, more than once, like I create a playbook, and it's given me back so much time to be able to work on my business, or in this case, not have to work a lot on my business because I have systems.
My like internal order loving self is like, yes. Like order. I love that. I also am big into, I told Evan, I think just yesterday, I was like, clients should never have to tell us anything more than once. Every time they tell us something, it goes into a manual. The manual is stored here. The passwords are stored here. Like everything is stored. They should never have to repeat themselves.
That's
because we have a system.
Quote. Say that again.
The client
write this down.
The client should never have to tell us something twice.
That's good.
Once they tell us something, even if you're just like taking notes during a call, we're taking notes during the call. We use Lisio for our practice management, and we take notes in Lisio, and then the notes get moved into the manual that's also in Lisio. So we have playbooks. I don't have playbooks as much in my personal realm, but in business, I've absolutely developed. We don't call them playbooks, we call them manuals, but the concept is the same.
Yeah.
Right? That like if a client has to ask something, not a client, but if a customer, not necessarily a client, but like somebody who calls us randomly.
Yeah.
If we get asked the same thing 3 times, we need to have a system for it. I don't want to be retyping the same email 10 times. Where do you store your personal playbooks? Are they like Google Docs or like?
Oh, it's so good. So many things. Yeah. So the way that I was first introduced it is on Google. So it's a Google folder. It's called Personal Playbook. And usually when I go in with businesses, when in doubt, we just do the same thing. Like it's a Google Doc. There's, like I said, 3 types. So a reference is just something to reference. Like my travel information. If someone needs like my, TSA global entry pre-check number, whatever it is.
If you travel, you should absolutely have.
Absolutely.
I made Evan get TSA before she was allowed to go to Vegas with me last week because I was like, we are not standing in the line.
We're not going to do that.
We are absolutely no. And then we're going to go sit in the lounge. We are not sitting out with, crying babies and loudness. Continue.
Yeah. Talk about like a crucial system. Like, but these are the things, right? Like, so now that's the default. Like, we are not traveling unless you have that. That's a system, right? Absolutely. We're only doing it this way. Yeah. But like references, that would be something that you just like might need to reference or send to someone. Template is something if I like am doing the same process over and over, I can just make a quick duplication of the Google Doc and then reuse it. Or a system is like step 1, step 2, step 3. So like how to whatever with my banking, how to do this for a renter, follow the process so that my assistant can, follow the steps. Or I learned this the hard way, but people move on from jobs if you have employees or again, assistant, or even just you might ask someone else for the favor. So the idea is I learned the hard way. I explained everything amazing to one assistant and then she moved on. She went to college and she was young, she was amazing. And then I had a new assistant.
Start all over.
Yeah. So now I learned to do that. And like really that's a lot of what I do at these high level companies, right? I go in, they're making multiple 7 figures and sometimes they don't have a playbook.
How? My clients, like when they're baby, like I started my company this year. I haven't done anything, which is like my favorite clients because instead of having a big mess for me to clean up, they just were like, I'm starting a business. Will you help me? And I'm like, oh yes, I get to teach you all of the accounting strategy, the way that we do it. So it's like clean from day one, right? But maybe in their first 6 months, they only made 30K, and it's like, even they will have a manual. Even the baby businesses have a manual. We have like all their vendors here, all their banking info here, like which banks do they use? Do the banks sync to QuickBooks? Do we need to pull their bank statements? Does the bank statement send a code to their phone? Can we have our own Usually we like to have our own logins to their banks, but if they're using a credit union, we don't get to have our own login because small banks don't do that, And it has literally a systematized, even for these companies that are only 3,000 in gross income.
Oh, so good.
You don't need to be big to have systems.
Everyone needs a Katey. Yeah. And it's probably better to do it from scratch versus having to undo. Yeah. Which I guess in a way that's probably powerful that I'm not having to undo a lot of systems. Like people use the word SOPs, but really they have like one SOP.
Tell people what SOP means if they don't know.
Standard operating procedure. I'm like, wait a second, hold on.
No,
all of a sudden,
I know what SOP
is. Well, yeah. So anything, again, like it's an operating procedure. You're doing it more than once. But even I remember when I did sales a while back, I was thinking like, well, why would I systematize? Like I'm so authentic. You can't create a system out of that. And yet, even the things that you don't think there are a system, I know I didn't think. I was like on sales calls, but when I actually wrote it down, I realized like, oh, well, I guess if I had to teach this to someone, here's what I would say. Well, think about this or ask this question. And you'd be shocked. Like you're probably doing some of the same things in a repeatable way, even if you think they're not. And just writing it down sometimes saves me time.
So much time. I just created my first course.
Oh, you did? Did you launch?
I did. It's not launched yet. I just hired somebody to do the course portal because who has time to build a course portal? Right. I just like filmed 72 videos and then was like, here you go. Can you please build this out?
Wow.
I mean, like we'll make like transcripts and PDFs and all that, but like it haven't been on my website. But the point of that was the course is called Onboarding with Excellence, and it's teaching accountants how to create an onboarding system. Because you're having the same conversation with every single person that calls you. Why are you not systematizing it? Because sales is scary to a lot of people, right?
Definitely.
But if you have it's not a script. That's not what it is. But if you have a system for explaining how you got to the number, example, like when I was learning, they always said, put the number at the bottom, explain the value and then say the number. For me, I hate that. I want to know what the number is. And once you tell me the number, I can listen to the value and then make my own judgment. But if you tell me that I'm not listening, you can tell me value all day, but until you've given me a ballpark of where you're at on numbers, I'm not listening. I'm waiting for the number. So in my course, I teach, put the number at the top and put the client at ease. They're just waiting to hear what the number is. They have no idea if you're going to say 5,000 or 1,000.
Love that.
You know what I mean? So I say, put the number at the top of the proposal, because then the client can be like, okay, I know what the number is.
Like they're waiting for
They're just waiting for the number,
anyway.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I go through the 2-page list of how we're going to add value and what we're going to do for them. And I list out every single thing that we do so that they know what all is included in that. And by the end, usually they say yes. If we've gotten all the way to that point, I'd say 8 times out of 10, they're like, let's do it. Because I've already prepped them, right? We've mentally prepped them. So like they know I've already given them a range of like where we're looking at, what we're probably going to do. So it's not like a huge sticker shock to them. But that's part of what I teach in my course is like this is how you should explain to people what you're going to do for them. And in doing so, put the number at the top. But it doesn't matter. You're selling. You're going to have this conversation where you're walking through the same document with every person, with every proposal. So why not just create a template of the proposal and then just drop out, put everything you do on one list. Everything in one Google spreadsheet, or one Google Sheets is what we use. Every single little service. And then if, for example, the new client doesn't need payroll, we delete out the payroll line. If they don't need sales tax, we delete out the sales tax line. But that way we don't have to rework the template every time. We have a template for QuickBooks cleanups. We have a template for QuickBooks setups. We have a template for monthly ongoing recurring services. And why rebuild it? And that's what the course is on.
So good. So what about, where did you learn systems? Like when did you just wake up one day? I know we're similar. We come from Michigan. We're like direct so personalities, like take us to the best path.
Yes. For me, I would say conferences. So I did network marketing, which I have a love, not so much love relationship with network marketing. Hate is not the right word. I don't hate it. And I think every person can benefit from spending a year in network marketing because the way that they teach the need for personal development, most companies don't teach that because if you learn how big you can be, you'll leave their company. So why would a CEO want to teach you personal development? Because that's like setting you up to go do your own thing, right?
That's one of my favorite. Can I share a quote on that? Like CEOs often say that, right? Like, well, what if they leave? So the new response is, yeah, but what if they stay and you don't pay to develop them? Yes. Keep going. I love and hate network marketing as well.
So I think everybody should do it just because they really push personal development. And where else are you in an environment where everyone around you is like driving hard at personal development, time management, all the skills that you need to be successful in network marketing? Even I don't consider them entrepreneurs because at the end of the day, they are relying on another company for business. And an entrepreneur, you take all the risk. In network marketing, you're based on a company. So really it's not your company. Yeah. You're a contractor. Yeah. You're sole proprietor as far as taxes are concerned, but like whatever. I'll get off my high horse on that.
The product exists. It's not like it's up to you.
Well, as someone who lost thousands of dollars when a company didn't ship the product, guess what happened when all that money, when all those sales got canceled because they never shipped the product? All my commissions also were refunded. And so all the money was all taken right back out of my account. And so it didn't matter that I had 10 grand in sales that month. It all went back out because the company's production got behind and they couldn't ship the product and all the customers were mad because a month later their product still hadn't arrived. You're relying on somebody else. Anyway, I'm getting off my network marketing high horse now.
Let's go into network marketing. MLMs, all these things. Come on.
But one of the things that they do is they force you to learn systems. And so I would say network marketing really helped me learn time management systems, learn personal development systems. And then secondly, QuickBooks conferences. And like the Woodard group puts on Scaling New Heights, the accounting conference that I speak at. And that conference and the Intuit QuickBooks conference, for me, are the two best conferences for the accounting world. And that's really where I learned systems that are like accounting specific or scaling specific.
Love systems.
Conferences are everything. Like if you're not going to conferences, what are you doing with your life?
What are you doing with your life? Really? Stop what you're doing right now and go buy
a conference ticket.
There's ways to get into them for free as well. So money is not a barrier.
Money is not a barrier. Money is a vehicle, not a barrier. And people need to learn that.
So good.
Yeah.
We could talk about so many things. We should talk about money. Should we talk about abundance? Should we talk about systems?
So many things. What, when you were first starting, because now you have a team.
I do.
You do. When did you go from, I can do this on my own, I can be a solopreneur, to I need help?
It's like really scary to hire someone that's not an assistant. I know. Oh, man. So I think I had to get really clear on like, what is my business model and what am I trying to create? Because there's been points in my life where I like that I just rely on myself and that's it.
So easy.
And yeah, but at the end of the day, like I am in the business world for impact. So even with that minimum statement, I'm here to scale because I'm here to impact. So when I got super clear on that, it was like, okay, cool. How do I do this in more of a scalable way? Which is it's the question. Every day I'm asking that question. Every time I think I've got it, then I shift to like a different opportunity or, there's just so much shifting involved. It's part of the game. It's just playing and
Pivoting.
adjusting to what people want. And
Pivot all day.
it clicks. And then it's like, well, none of this makes sense. Oh, it all makes sense. So yeah, getting clear on that. And then knowing that, how can I grow? So KPIs is like my biggest thing when it comes to like
What's
hiring.
a KPI? They might not know.
Yeah. Key performance indicator. So this is like when I'm talking to like, again, people that are trying to scale to 8 figures, this is one of the things that I would say almost everyone lacks. So you might as well start it now. Because even when people are making their first hire, again, I was helping another doctor just last week, and we were talking about he was going to make his first employee hire. And he's like, how do I figure out how much to pay them? Well, hold on. What is the metric of the business that they're impacting? And so that's what I had to get clear on. Like, is it a sales metric? Is it like the client satisfaction metric? What is the metric that I want someone else to hold?
That is so good.
The accountability for. So yeah, because again, I think people like hire people to do things, but then like I realize I don't want to have to manage a person. So it's the metric that allows people to self-manage themselves.
Wow.
Yes. So like even
fire.
with assistants or like with this, client success role or whatever it is, okay, here's the 3 metrics. So no more than 3, just like I would in a big corporation too. Each person should have 3 things that they're accountable for. Accountable means like the ability to count. They can count whether or not they're hitting it. And so I'll give the doctor example because that's simpler. He wanted to hire someone in sales, but he wasn't very clear. So what he really wanted, I think he thought he wanted like a closer, someone to like close the sales. But what we wanted was people to take his leads and turn them into booked appointments. So, okay, that is his metric. So we got to work backwards and say, how many booked appointments based on your close rate, doctor fill in the blank, how many appointments do you need this person to book so they're profitable? So there's a return. Like that every $1 you're spending on, in basically their salary, you're bringing in $4 for the business or whatever it is. So we work backwards. Okay, this many appointments booked would be worth it to me because I know this many will show and this many I can close. So that's the first metric. The second metric is, okay, I need them to have this type of show up rate. And then the third is ultimately this much revenue or whatever it is. So yeah, if you're thinking about hiring a person, what I would advise is not listing out things. What is the metric that you want them to hold? Because then, like what that has done for me every time I've hired, I've also done some poor jobs hiring. There's like rules in hiring that to follow, and it's fine. We're always figuring it out. Even though I know the rules, I know what to do. But yeah, coming back to a metric is super, super valuable. The one thing that I would advise people to do that I always do now. What's the metric?
I didn't even know that.
So good.
It's so good. I got to learn something.
Yeah.
I love this. This is so fun. So just wrapping up, if you have advice, what is kind of like the one thing, or it could be 2 things. What is the 1 or 2 things that if people wanted to do something today to change their business within kind of your realm of expertise, what would that be?
Yeah. Okay, I will share what's coming to me because it's the same thing whether you have like a mid-7-figure business for myself and personal life when I do coaching around my goals, or like for any size business really. So the one thing that I would say, and this is like a scaling system, but quarterly set key, we call them rocks, key objectives. But here's the catch, like 1 to 5 things. Get in a rhythm with yourself where you're setting and declaring. So they're declarations, right? By nature, you might not know how to get there. But what I'll do is I'll declare. Right now I have 3 key ones. So 3 to 5, 3 every 90 days. So I make these declarations. I make them, they're stretchy because not only am I going to achieve 3 things, but I know I get to become a new version of myself just to create them. So I make sure there's alignment there, not just on things I want to get done. Like at one point it was write a book. Okay, great. And is that stretch or is that just a doing? So I try to have like doing and being involved. Like who would I have to be and do? But yeah, like if we can simplify our lives down a lot of times to like 1 to 5 things, it's wild. Simplicity, at least for me, I'll speak for myself. It works so well for me to be like, cool, all I have to do is 3 things. Like when starting my business, I remember one of the first thing I did was how do I simplify my business to 1 number? 15 outreaches a day. If I do 15 outreaches a day before I go to bed, like no matter what, I know I'll get there. and it works. So, okay, if I had to make 3 bets or 3 like predictions, what are my 3 things that if I do this quarter will set me up for success? And then having integrity to be like, okay, like for real, these are going to happen. If I don't know, I will hire someone. I will find someone. I will get uncomfortable or I'll get coaching. So yeah, a rhythm like that quarterly is what I would advise. You can do it however long you want. A year is just like a long time, right?
Yeah.
Quarterly is like, okay, I got to show up today if I'm going to make a change this quarter.
Yes.
So yeah, that's the one thing that I would do with a big business. I do for myself. I have personal declarations and yeah, stretchy but attainable.
I love that. Stretchy but attainable. That's so good. I'm going to keep that. I like the stretchy, like a good pair of yoga pants.
Yeah. Because like growth matters. So it's a cool way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I can go do growth development courses, which I do. I love reading books, etc. And literally the goal itself can allow me to grow if I choose the right, like directional goal.
I'm taking that. I'm going to do that. You guys can hold me accountable. I'm going to do that. Well, it has been so fun having you here. We could do this all day, honestly.
I know. We love business. Like,
we do.
Everything is business and impact, which is so fun. Thank you. And for the work that you're doing, like the problem you solve in business is not just so crucial for like business, but for people's mental sanity. So I love what you do in the impact world, but yeah, that's what I appreciate about you. Where you show up, like you show up with impact. So what you said with ministry, I think that's something, like that's my biggest takeaway from being here, but seeing Katey's life is, yeah, how do I show up in a way where I'm always impacting? Like you're aligned in what you're doing. Life is ministry for you. Business is ministry. It's all ministry, it's super powerful.
I love that. Thanks, girl. So if people want to know more about you or follow you or hire you as a sales coach, where can people find you?
Yeah. So Instagram, you can DM me on Instagram, lisa.zelenak, Zelenak. Yeah. And let me know where you're at. Usually mid 7 figures are the clients that I work with, but feel free to say, hey, would love to encourage you with your sales or wherever you're at.
So good. And we'll put all her details in the bio. But thanks for being here. It's been so fun. I love you so much. That's a wrap, guys. And remember, today is a great day to start a business. Bye.